Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the NBA slate on Draftkings and Yahoo for Friday, January the 15th. We're going to cover Friday's 8-game slate in a new format. I'm going to be going team by team today. Normally, I always go position by position. That's what I've been doing for like the last 3-4 years I've been making DFS videos. But I think with how the NBA is just going this year, with how teams are having to rule out so many guys because of COVID protocols, I think it's going to make sense to go team by team, especially on the days where we have teams that are missing so many players. Like we've had the last few slates with Miami being so thin, the Rockets on Thursday night, Dallas has been missing some guys. I'm going to try going team by team just, for the next couple of videos, see how you guys like it. Definitely leave some feedback down below. I feel like this will allow me to kind of briefing up my videos. My videos normally are like 25 to 30 minutes long. I think this will allow me to get through them a little bit quicker, which is obviously better for you guys. So I'm not keeping up too much of your time, because we'll definitely go through some teams. We'll talk about some games that I really just don't have interest in. Obviously, there'll be games that I have a lot of interest in, and some games that, there's really no interest for me. So we're going to go team by team today. We'll start off, with the early games, and then we'll finish up with the 2 late night games that we have. But before we get started with the breakdown, guys, as always, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like button down below. If you are new to the channel as well, be sure to click that subscribe button. I do upload a ton of content to this channel, so I would appreciate it if you would subscribe. Make NFL, NBA, MLB content. Pretty much just have videos going up year-round. I will have an NFL video up for the divisional round this weekend. It'll probably go up sometime on Friday, so if you are watching this video on Friday, which you most likely are, be sure to check the channel. I'll probably have my NFL video up sometime, early afternoon. And I will be live streaming as well for tonight's slate. I'll be going live, sometime in the afternoon around 3:30, 4 o'clock Eastern time. So if you're free around that time, definitely tune into the live stream. It'll be a Q&A for about an hour. I'll be able to answer all you guys' questions. We'll take a look at, any updated news we have that comes out throughout the day. I'll be sure to touch on that in the live stream. Really just, answer all your questions, which is, the main reason you want to tune in. But yeah, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at Friday's slate. We'll start off, in this first game, Orlando and Boston. We'll start off on the Orlando side. So Orlando, really not a team that I have much interest in today. Like, this is kind of one of the reasons I like going team by team, because I'll just be able to knock out some teams really quickly. And Orlando is a team that I don't really have a ton of interest in. Vooch, I think, is always viable, but on this slate, so many games, like, he's just not a guy that really stands out as a top option for me. Aaron Gordon, his minutes are starting to ramp up. He's starting to play 35, 36 minutes. Basically, he doesn't have a minutes limit anymore. So he's at least viable, but like his prices also came up to $7,300. I think Aaron Gordon looks the best on Yahoo. That's where he's more reasonably priced at $26. Really, like, Gordon and Vooch are the only 2 guys I even have any interest in from Orlando. Really, nobody else interests me here. I mean, it's not a good matchup against Boston. It's going to be a slow-paced game. Should be one of the more lower-scoring games on this slate. I mean, this game in general doesn't have a ton of appeal for me. We'll talk about the Boston side, though. I think there's more appealing options there. But really, on Orlando, I think Vooch is, a low-owned tournament play that you could target. Aaron Gordon, a guy I don't mind either, but no core plays really stand out from Orlando. That's really all I'm looking to on that side. Now, on the Boston side, this is a team that's still dealing with some COVID issues. Jason Tatum is still out for COVID protocol. I'm pretty sure he actually tested positive, so he's going to be out for a couple more games. Kemba Walker remains out. Robert Williams remains out, and Carson Edwards remains out. One of the big question marks, though, is Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown is questionable. Daniel Tice is questionable as well. So those are pretty big, impactful injuries. If Jaylen Brown is able to play, I mean, he looks like a pretty good option, even at $8,900. With no Tatum, with Kemba still out, like, it is going to be Jaylen Brown just dominating the usage. We've seen Jaylen Brown already be able to put up monster numbers this year, even when Tatum is healthy. And now with Tatum out, I like Jaylen Brown quite a bit, even if, even though it's like not a great matchup against Orlando, it's not the most appealing game overall on the slate to target. If I'm really targeting someone from this game, it is for sure going to be Jaylen Brown. So we'll need to keep an eye on his status if he's able to play. I actually do like him quite a bit with Tatum out today. I think Jaylen Brown is pretty affordable on Yahoo, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he's still $38, which is a pretty reasonable price tag. Definitely like Jaylen Brown on both sides if he plays. If he's out, that definitely benefits guys like Jeff Teague, Peyton Pritchard. We saw this scenario, I think it was a while back. It was like 4 or 5 days ago. They were supposed to play the Heat. I think Boston only had like 9 available players for that game. Like, they had so many guys out. Ultimately, the game did not get played. It got postponed, so we weren't able to see, how this would go. But today's game looks like it's going to play. That Boston does have some guys back, like Tristan Thompson is back. Grant Williams is back. They got, I think someone else is back as well. Javonte Green, I think, may be back. He's questionable, so we'll have to watch his status. But yeah, I mean, on the Boston side, I do like Jaylen Brown a lot if he plays, given Tatum's out. Marcus Smart's too expensive for me. Even if Brown's out, I don't want to pay $7,600 for Marcus Smart. If Daniel Tice plays, not a ton of interest in him. Now, if he's out, I think that does benefit Tristan Thompson. At $4,800, Tristan Thompson would actually be a pretty viable option on this slate, especially because Robert Williams remains out as well. I actually would have a good amount of interest in Thompson. But if Jaylen Brown is out, then that does open up Peyton Pritchard, Jeff Teague. Both those guys would for sure be viable. I'm not sure who would start if Brown were to be out. Probably Pritchard would start, but that will just be something to monitor. This is a team that I actually do have some interest in today, Boston, that is. It really all depends on if Jaylen Brown plays. If he plays and if Tice plays, really the only guy I have interest in from Boston is Jaylen Brown. But if Jaylen Brown's out, if Tice is out, then I think Peyton Pritchard, Tristan Thompson, even Jeff Teague, those guys become viable for me. Marcus Smart, I think he's $27 on Yahoo. That's not a great price, but if Jaylen Brown winds up out, I wouldn't mind Smart just because he would have to really dominate the usage with no Brown and no Tatum. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the next game. We'll go ahead and move on to the Cleveland and the Knicks game. We'll start off on the Knicks side. So on the Knicks, this one's pretty straightforward for me. Really not much interest in anyone besides Julius Randle. I think Julius Randle definitely stands out as a really good option on this slate. He's someone I really always have interest in, and now that his price has come down a little bit in a good matchup against Cleveland, definitely like Julius Randle here at 9,100. Did have a monster game against the Cavs earlier this year. 63 DraftKings points in 44 minutes. We know the minutes are going to be there. He played 40 minutes last game against Brooklyn. We're going to get around 40 minutes today from Randle, if not 38, 40 minutes if this game is close. I like him quite a bit at 9,100. He is a guy that does stand out a lot on this slate. I think he's a really strong pay-up option. Overall, it does make a ton of sense. But like Barrett, Payton, even Mitchell Robinson, I'm not the biggest fan of now that his prices come up. Like if Alec Burks remains out, maybe you could go to Austin Rivers. But really on the Knicks for me, it's Julius Randle, and that's about it. I really don't have interest in anyone else besides Julius Randle. Now on the Cavs side, the Cavs do have some appealing options. Obviously, we'll start off with Andre Drummond at the top, 9,300. I think Drummond does look like a pretty good pay-up option as well on the slate. Now, between him and Randle, I think I would prefer Julius Randle. But Drummond's definitely a guy you could look to. He's going to play monster minutes as well, 36 to 38 minutes if it's a close game. He also had a really big game last time these teams played, 59 DraftKings points in 33 minutes. We know Kevin Love's going to remain out. I believe that Jared Allen, he got traded to the Cavs, but I don't think he's going to be available for this game. He still has to go through everything, in terms of COVID protocols and all that stuff. So I would say it's probably going to be at least a game or two, if not, a couple games before Jared Allen is able to make his debut with the Cavs. So I'm not expecting Jared Allen to play. Colin Sexton is still out. Darius Garland's still out. So maybe you could look to like Damian Dotson, but he's 5,200. Not a core option for me. Same with like Cedi Osman, Larry Nance. Like at their price points, they just don't really stand out on this slate. Really the only guy I have much interest in from Cleveland is Andre Drummond. And really this game as a whole, it's just the two top guys for me, Drummond and Randle. That's really all I have interest in from this game. So yeah, I think we can go ahead and move on to the next one. This one actually is pretty appealing. We got the Mavs and the Bucks. This should be a very appealing game to watch. I think this might be an ESPN game. I'm not exactly sure. But we got Dallas. We'll start off with them. You got Luka Doncic at the top, obviously, for $11K. Luka coming off a monster game last time out against Charlotte. I did have a good amount of exposure to Luka, but definitely not enough on the last slate. There was so much value on Wednesday's slate that it was very easy to get Luka. So I did play him a good amount. I had him in like 25, 30% of my lineups, but that still obviously was not enough when he scored 77 DraftKings points. I was a little down on him given that Porzingis was back. Obviously, Porzingis coming back does hurt Luka a little bit. Luka's still going to be, a fantasy monster, though, even with Porzingis on the floor. But I think on this slate, I'd probably rather go to Giannis on the other side of this game rather than pay $11K for Luka. Luka's obviously a guy who can play basically every slate, but I think I would prefer Giannis here. Porzingis on DraftKings, I can't play at 8K. We just don't know what his minutes are going to look like. In his first game, in his season debut on Wednesday, he played 21 minutes, had 27 DraftKings points. When Porzingis gets fully healthy and he's playing his full allotment of minutes, he'll be someone worth considering. But right now, that is not the case, so we don't really have to go to him. On Yahoo, you could actually target Porzingis there. He is only $26. Like, if I was going to play Porzingis today, it would be on Yahoo. I actually did have him in a few lineups on the last slate. I mean, he wasn't terrible for his price point. He was only $23 on the last slate. At $26, I'm looking for about 35 to 40 fantasy points, which Porzingis can definitely get if he plays like 25, 26 minutes. I would assume his minutes ramp up a little bit. We don't know yet, though, a specific number, so that'll just be something to monitor. But in terms of value, we actually do have some value on Dallas. THJ at 6,900. I just don't think I want to pay that much for Tim Hardaway Jr. I know he's been playing well recently, but that's just too expensive of a price tag for me. Kind of the same with Trey Burke as well. Trey Burke came off the bench. He played big minutes, 32 minutes, but with Luka healthy, with Porzingis in the lineup now, Burke's just not going to be as dominant of a player in terms of usage. He shot terribly last game. He only shot 2 for 12 from the field, 2 for 8 from 3. So obviously if he has a better shooting game, he's probably going to do well. But even at 4,900, he doesn't really look like a top value today. I think the guy that stands out the most from Dallas is James Johnson. So Dorian Finney-Smith, Josh Richardson, I believe Maxi Kleber as well. Maxi Kleber was ruled out for Wednesday's game. We don't know his status yet, but I believe he's out. I'm pretty sure I saw all these guys were ruled out. So I think Kleber, Powell, Richardson, DFS, all those guys are still out for today. And assuming they are, James Johnson does look appealing on both sides. 4,600 on DraftKings, I like him quite a bit. If you look at Yahoo, he's coming in very cheap over there at small forward, only $11. He's played pretty big minutes off the bench last 2 games with Finney-Smith out, with Kleber out, 26 minutes in both games, 27, 26 DraftKings points. This is a guy that can average a fantasy point per minute. If they're going to keep giving him 26, 28 minutes off the bench, he can definitely give you over 30 DraftKings points and be a good play at 4,600. Since his price did come up $700, he's not a great value. I wouldn't say he's a core value for me. He's not a guy that I'm going to have in 80, 90% of my lineups, but right now we don't have a ton of standout value on this slate, so I think James Johnson at 4,600 is kind of an early look, cheap option. Does make a lot of sense here, assuming that Kleber and DFS remain out. I think DFS has already been, so yeah, he's been required to quarantine, so he's going to remain out. I guess we don't know Kleber's status yet. I want Kleber to be out, but I think even if Kleber plays, you could still go to James Johnson, because last game, or the game before, Kleber played in that one, and James Johnson still got 26 minutes. I'm assuming we get 25 to 26 minutes from Johnson off the bench. So at 4,600, as a fantasy point per minute player, or that he does look like a pretty solid value today. Willie Cauley-Stein started last game, which was kind of surprising. They played him alongside Porzingis. I thought Porzingis would start at center, but they elected to start Willie Cauley-Stein at center, and he had a really good game. He played 30 minutes. He had 31 DraftKings points. At 4,500, I think Willie Cauley-Stein might be a little bit too risky for me. I know he did really well last game, but this is just hard for me. It's hard for me to go to him on a big slate like this when we have so many other, standout plays. Just not a guy that I feel like I have to have at 4,500. If he does play 30 minutes again, he might pay off that salary, but last game, I think he got 4 stocks. Yeah, he got 3 blocks and a steal. He got 14 rebounds. I don't know if that's something that we can expect to really continue. With Porzingis in the lineup, with Porzingis just, going to get his minutes ramped up even more, I just don't really want to go to Willie Cauley-Stein. So that's kind of it for the Mavs for me. I think it's definitely James Johnson I like the most. Luka's obviously a really good play, and Porzingis on Yahoo I think is viable as well. Those are the guys I'm looking to the most from Dallas. But on the other side, on Milwaukee, when they're fully healthy, it's really just Giannis for me. I don't really play Chris Middleton or Drew Holiday when Giannis is healthy, or when they're both healthy, when they're all playing. Now, Holiday, I think he's probable for this game. Last I saw, yeah, he's probable. He's expected to play, so that's nothing we should really worry about. So really on the Dallas side, or on the Milwaukee side, it's just Giannis for me. And I think Giannis does look like a really good pay-up option today. I do slightly prefer him over Luka. And I think this is a game that can stay close, which is normally when I do like to target Giannis, I want to target him in games that are going to be competitive, where he's going to have to play his normal 34, 35 minutes. We've seen in competitive games this year, you're getting 33, 34 minutes from Giannis, and I expect that's what he plays today. We know this is a guy that is incredibly productive when he's on the floor. He contributes in all categories. He stuffs the stat sheet. Literally has triple-double upside every night. Love Giannis on the slate. Definitely stands out as my preferred pay-up option, over 10K out of all the studs. I like him a ton on both sides. He's coming in a little bit cheaper than Luka on both sides, so definitely give me Giannis as one of the better pay-up option on the slate. Do prefer him over Luka, but yeah, that's really it for this game. Mainly just, James Johnson, Giannis, Luka, Porzingis on Yahoo. Those are kind of the guys I'm looking to from this game. Now, Memphis, Minnesota, this should be a very appealing one. This should be a very fast-paced game. It was pretty high scoring the last time these two teams played, I believe, on Wednesday. I think the final score was 118-107. One injury we'll have to watch on the Memphis side is John Morant. John Morant is questionable, does have a chance to return for this game. He's been out for about 2 or 3 weeks, I believe. Don't know yet if he'll have any restrictions coming back. It was an ankle injury, so my best guess is that John Morant is probably limited a little bit. If he's not limited, I mean, it's 7,500. John Morant looks pretty good at 7,500. He's only played in 2 full games this year, and in those games, he was really, really good. 66, 44 DraftKings points. Like, this is a guy that has massive upside when he's fully healthy. He's not a $7,500 player when he's fully healthy. Like, we're going to see Morant priced around the 9K range for most of the season. We'll have to keep an eye on if he's restricted or not, but if Morant plays and there's no limits, I actually do like him quite a bit at 7,500. Now, Joe Val is someone I do like a lot in tournaments, so on the last slate, I did have a little bit of interest in Joe Val. He was in one of my better tournament lineups that finished, I believe, 10th or 11th on Yahoo in the Baller in their big tournament. It had Joe Val in it, and he went out there and crushed on Wednesday night, played 30 minutes, had 50 DraftKings points in the same matchup. I like going right back to Joe Val tonight. He was very low owned on the last slate. Maybe since he's coming off a big game, maybe he'll get a little bit more ownership today, but he's still probably going to be lower owned than he should be. Joe Val's a guy that I always just have interest in, man. He's a dude that stuffs the stat sheet. He can score, he can rebound, he gives you like 20-20 upside almost every night. He can block shots. Like, this is a guy that has 45, 50-point upside every night. It seems like the minutes are going to be there. As long as the game is close, we're going to get 28 to 30 minutes from Joe Val. Good matchup as well against Minnesota. Pretty bad defensive team. A Minnesota team that I think is playing pretty fast this year as well. I do like Joe Val a ton. He's definitely one of my favorite tournament plays on this slate. I like him a ton at the center position on both sides. Does feel a little bit too cheap on both sides, but those are kind of the main pieces I like from Minnesota or from Memphis. Morant, if he plays and he's not limited, he looks pretty good at 7,500. Joe Val I like a lot. Even if Morant's out, I don't really want to go to Tyus Jones. Dylan Brooks, he's a fine option, but not like a core play for me. Brandon Clark's been playing better, but now his price is way up. Really, that's all I got on the Memphis side for today. So let's go ahead and move on to Minnesota. Minnesota, another pretty appealing team to target today. I do like Karl-Anthony Towns as a pay-up option at 9,900. Towns just, when he's healthy this year, he's going to be a guy that I basically always have interest in. So far this season, in the 4 games he's played, he's given you at least 46 DraftKings points in every game. The dude he's such a productive player on a point-per-minute basis. He can score, he can rebound, he can block shots, he can basically just do everything. 9,900 does still feel a little bit too cheap for him in a game like this that should be played at a pretty fast pace. I do like Towns as a pay-up option. I'd rather get up to Giannis if I can. I think I'd rather save salary and probably play Julius Randle as well, but Towns does look like a pretty strong tournament play. He's going to be low-owned, so I do like him in GPPs. Normally I don't play D'Angelo Russell when he's over 8K and when Towns is healthy, but Ricky Rubio is out for today. So with Ricky Rubio out, maybe you see a few more minutes for D'Angelo Russell. At 8,300, he's a fine option, but he doesn't really stand out as a core play for me. Really on the Minnesota side, I mean, maybe Anthony Edwards picks up a few more minutes with Rubio out, but he's kind of hard to trust right now. His minutes have really been trending down. There's not a ton that I love on the Minnesota side outside of Karl-Anthony Towns and maybe D'Angelo Russell. Really, in this game, it's like the centers for me, Towns and Valanciunas. If Morant plays and he's not limited, I like him, but that's kind of it from this game. I thought I'd have more interest in this game, but with the pricing, with how these guys are priced, there's not a ton of standout plays outside of the top guys. Malik Beasley, I'm a big fan of, but do I want to pay $7,100 for him on this slate? Probably not. He had a good game against Memphis when these teams played on Wednesday, but still, I don't think I want to pay over 7K for him on an 8-game slate. So, let's go ahead and move on to the next game. Another game that should be pretty fast-paced. We got the Bulls and the Thunder. I know the Bulls are towards the top of the league in pace this season. It's a really good matchup when you go up against the Bulls, so we'll talk about some guys I do like on the OKC side. But first, on the Bulls side, at the top, you got Kobe White, Zach LaVine, your top 2 options here as no surprise. LaVine I like, but, at 9,500, that is a pretty hefty price tag for Zach LaVine. We haven't seen the Bulls play in a few games. They've had their last 2 or 3 games get postponed. They haven't played since, the 10th. It's been 5 days since they played. I don't know if that really has an effect on them, but at 9,500, I think LaVine's a little bit too expensive for me on this slate. Kind of the same could be said with Kobe White. His prices also come up. I mean, both LaVine and White have been playing so well this year. I just don't know, if they're going to be core options for me at their price points. I think if they were cheaper, I'd have more interest. But, at 9,500, 7,400, they don't look like really core options for me, even in a pretty good matchup. Wendell Carter Jr. feels a little bit too expensive at 6,200. I believe Lauri Markkanen is expected back. Yeah, he's expected to play today. At 5,900 though, I don't really have too much interest in Lauri Markkanen at 5,900. I think Otto Porter is expected to play. Yeah, he's expected to play as well. So basically the Bulls are kind of getting fully healthy. Markkanen's expected back. Porter's going to play. I think Garrett Temple's questionable, but if he's out, that really doesn't affect too much. The Bulls aren't a team I have too much interest in today. Maybe outside of some Levine in tournaments or some Kobe White in tournaments. I think that's really it for me on the Bulls side. Now on the OKC side, I do like one guy here for sure. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, definitely one of my favorite plays overall on the slate. I think he's a little bit too cheap on both sides. 7,700 on DraftKings. You got SGA on Yahoo coming in at $32 over there. I like him a ton at his Yahoo salary. So with this Bulls team playing, like the second, third fastest pace in the league so far this year, it is a really good spot for SGA, really good spot for this Thunder team. I'm pretty sure the Thunder have been a slow-paced team. Don't quote me on that, but I think they've been kind of towards the bottom of the league in pace. So it is definitely a pace-up spot for them against the Bulls. The Bulls are not really a good defensive team. They play fast. We know SGA is a guy that has a ton of upside. I know he's been struggling lately, but matchup against the Lakers, they got blown out. That wasn't the best spot. It was kind of weird to see him struggle as much as he did against San Antonio, but I'm expecting a big bounce-back game from SGA here. I like him a ton at 7,700. I think he's going to go overlooked on this slate. I think people are just going to, kind of skim over him and not really look to roster him much, so he should be pretty low owned. I think he'll probably be around 10% owned, which is definitely too low in my opinion. The upside's through the roof. I think we can definitely get a 45, 50-point game from SGA tonight. He's one of my favorite plays on this slate overall. I like him a ton in the mid-range, and definitely the first guy that stands out to me from OKC. Now, Darius Bazley, I think he's probable. Oh, he's actually listed as questionable, so if Bazley's out, that could actually impact a good amount. That could maybe open up Pujeski. I can't remember how you say his name, but Pujeski, he's 3,300. He would likely start if Bazley were to be out. He would actually be a really, really good value, so we'll need to keep an eye on the status of Bazley. If he's out, Pogveski or whatever is going to become a really, really good value option. Hate that I'm butchering his name, but I have no idea. Like, Pokuveski, I don't know how to say this. Pokuveski, he'd be a really good value if Bazley were to be out. I would assume that he would start if Bazley were to be out. Good matchup for Al Horford, but I don't know if I want to really play Al Horford on an 8-game slate. Like George Hill, Diallo, Lou Dort, these guys aren't really top options for me. Roby, I had a lot of interest in on the last slate once Horford got ruled out, but obviously Horford's playing today, so not much interest in Roby. Really, it's just SGA for me, and then if Bazley winds up out, Pojeski at 3,300 would become a great value, assuming he would start for Bazley. Bazley himself, I think, is a fine option. Price tag has started to come down a little bit, and it is a good matchup against the Bulls, but still would not be like a core play for me. SGA, though, definitely a core play, a guy that I do like a lot on the OKC side. But let's go ahead and move on to the next one. We got the Hawks and the Jazz. We'll start off on the Hawks side. So last slate, I believe it was Wednesday, we had the Hawks and the Suns. They were supposed to play on Wednesday, I think that was. And I had a lot of interest in Trae Young on that slate because he was only 8,900. The game got postponed, so I couldn't play Trae Young then. But this game should be good to go, and Trae Young's price has come down even more. He's down to 8,700. I know the matchup is terrible. I don't love a matchup against the Jazz. Obviously, that's not a great spot, but 8,700 for Trae Young is definitely way too cheap in my opinion. In tournaments, this is someone I want to have exposure to just because he has so much upside. He can still drop 50-plus DraftKings points any night. We know he's an excellent shooter. When he gets hot, he'll just chuck basically the entire game. So I do like him. I think the price tag is too low. If he was 9,500 today, I wouldn't have much interest, but at 8,700, definitely like some Trae Young at that price point. Kind of the same with John Collins as well. He's a guy that I've rostered a lot this year. I think he's a little bit too cheap at 7K. But really on the Atlanta side, it's definitely just Trae Young for me as kind of a top option. Like Hunter, Herter, Reddish, none of these guys stand out as top plays against the Jazz. Really, it's just Trae Young, a little bit of John Collins. That's kind of all I'm looking to from Atlanta. Capella, 6,700. He just feels too expensive for me. You don't want to pay that price for him. So let's go ahead and move on to the Jazz side. Definitely a good spot for these Jazz guys going up against the Hawks, who are not a good defensive team, a team that plays relatively fast as well. Donovan Mitchell has the top of this, in terms of price, he's the top of their team, coming in at 8,400. Really good matchup for Donovan Mitchell. Not a guy that I play often. I haven't really played Donovan Mitchell much this year, but this matchup is excellent that I think he does warrant some consideration on this slate. I wish he was a little bit cheaper. If he was 7,600, 7,800, I think I'd have a lot more interest. At 8,400, I mean, you need like 50 plus DraftKings points from Mitchell. And how often does he score 50 plus DK points? I mean, he's only done it once so far out of his last 10 games. I think because of the price, Mitchell's not as good of a play as you would expect, but I think he's cheap on Yahoo. Let me check the Yahoo price real quick. Mitchell is $33 on Yahoo, so I think if I was going to play him anywhere, it would definitely be over there. Same could be said for Rudy Gobert. Gobert's only $31 on Yahoo. I think that looks like a pretty good price as well. On DraftKings, like kind of similar. Gobert just feels a little bit too expensive at $7,800. You need like 45, 50 DraftKings points from Gobert to pay off that price point. And obviously he has that kind of upside in him, but how often does he hit that number? Not too often. Conley, I'm not the biggest fan of at 6,900. Like, I love the matchup here for the Jazz guys, but their price points are just making it to where you can't really look to many of them. I mean, Clarkson should definitely benefit with Joe Ingles out, but again, like, he is 6,100. I mean, he's shown upside. He definitely has 40-plus point upside when he's getting the minutes, but really the price tags are what makes me not as interested in these Jazz guys. I think they're more appealing on Yahoo, where the pricing's a lot better over there. On DraftKings, I don't think I'm going to be able to pay up for much of these guys, even though it is a great matchup. So really, that's it for this game. Let's go ahead and move on to the two late-night games. We got the Pelicans and the Lakers, and then the Clippers and the Kings. Those are our two 10 o'clock games for tonight. We'll start off with the Lakers-Pelicans game, and we'll start off on the Pelicans side. This is actually a team worth talking about for sure. So, we'll talk about Brandon Ingram, Zion, those guys, but hitting on the injuries first, Lonzo Ball has already been ruled out for this game. He was out in their last game. We saw Nickeil Alexander-Walker get the start and have a massive, massive game with Lonzo out. Eric Bledsoe was out last game as well. He's currently listed as questionable, so that'll be an injury to monitor. But really, outside of Lonzo, the rest of the team is healthy. So starting off at the top with Brandon Ingram, he was a guy that I had a lot of interest in on the last slate. Once Zion got ruled out, once we got the confirmation that Bledsoe was out as well. Like, the Pelicans were missing so many guys. Lonzo, Bledsoe, Zion, they were all out last game. Today, Lonzo will still be out. Zion's playing, though, and Bledsoe is questionable. I'd assume Bledsoe plays today, but that'll just be something to monitor. At 8,600, Brandon Ingram's someone you can always look to. I mean, if you want to factor in the revenge game, it's a revenge game for him against the Lakers. On this slate, though, I don't think he stands out as a top option, especially since Zion is back. I think I'd honestly rather take the savings and play Zion for 7,900. He missed a game because of health protocols, but he's expected back today. I don't think that's going to limit him at all. He should play his normal minutes, 34, 35 minutes, as long as this game stays close. 7,900, that price point seems about right for Zion. Like, he hasn't been a guy that's put up massive games this year outside of, like, Christmas Day against Miami. But still, the upside is definitely there. I do slightly prefer him over Ingram, but I think the guards, this is where I have the most interest in from the Pelican side. So with Lonzo out, that does bring Nickeil Alexander-Walker into play. I am assuming that even if Eric Bledsoe plays, Nickeil Alexander-Walker will probably start again. He played incredibly well on a Wednesday night with Lonzo out. 33 minutes, 52 DraftKings points from NAW. And honestly, it's not a surprise to see him put up that big of a game, because this is someone that when he gets the opportunity to play, he's a high-usage guy. He'll have the ball in his hands a ton. He'll take a ton of shots. He's a great, producer in terms of fantasy. He can average over a fantasy point per minute. I would assume that if he starts again with Lonzo out, he probably gets over 30 minutes. And at 4,400, he does still feel a little bit too cheap on this slate. So I do like Nickeil Alexander-Walker a ton. I think he's a really good option once again. He looks really good on Yahoo as well. Does also still feel a little bit too cheap over there. Coming in at only $15 at point guard. Definitely like me some NAW on both sides today. So really, NAW with Lonzo out, I like a lot. If Eric Bledsoe plays, I think he looks like a pretty good option as well. I had a lot of interest in him on the last slate. Obviously, he did not play, so I didn't play him. But with Lonzo out, he does greatly benefit. His numbers this season are way better with Lonzo off the floor. He sees like a 5% bump in usage. He averages like 1.12 fantasy points per minute with Lonzo off the floor. Should play 32, 34 minutes if this game is close. At 5,700, if Bledsoe plays today, I actually have a lot of interest in him. Him and NAW are kind of my two main targets from the Pelicans, and I think Zion's fine to mix in as well. But definitely Bledsoe and Alexander-Walker are the two guys I have the most interest in from this team. But on the Lakers side, like, the Lakers are just not a team that I've really looked to play much this year. When LeBron and AD are both playing, like, they just haven't been that great for fantasy this year. Like, AD, I mean, we've seen him put up some big games at times. Like, he had that big game against San Antonio, pretty big game against Memphis, but still not a guy that I've been looking to pay up for much this year. Same can be said for LeBron. Like, you know, these two guys, LeBron and AD, they can pop off at any time. Like, they can go off at any game, but never do I feel like I have to pay up for them unless it's just like a 2-game slate and they're the only studs on the slate. With this being an 8-gamer, us having so many other stud options, like, really, there's not much I like at all from the Lakers. They're just not a team that I really get exposure to when they're fully healthy. You know, if by some chance AD were to sit or LeBron were to sit, then obviously that would make them more appealing. But for right now, even though they're both listed as questionable, I'm just going to assume that AD and LeBron play because they've been questionable every game so far, and they've basically played every game. So really, when the Lakers are fully healthy, they're just not a team I get exposure to. Probably just going to be a team I fade today, don't have much interest in at all. So let's go ahead and move on to the Clippers and Kings game. We'll finish off with this one before we do end the video. You know, the Clippers are kind of another team when they're fully healthy, when the prices are where they are right now, like they're just not a team I really get much exposure to either. Like Kawhi's 9,600, PG's 9,400. Both those guys are pretty expensive. I mean, it is a good matchup against the Kings, but I rarely play or pay up for Kawhi or PG when they're both playing, especially now that PG's prices come way up. Like, kind of the same could be said with these two guys, as I said for the Lakers guys. Like, I rarely play them when they're both fully healthy, especially not on a big slate like this. Now, we do have a couple injuries to monitor. So, Patrick Beverley is questionable for this game. Lou Williams, I believe, is questionable as well. If we get it, if Patrick Beverley plays and Lou Will is out, I think that gives a slight bump up for Beverley. If Beverley's out and Lou Will plays, I think that gives a little bit of a bump for Lou Will. If they both wind up out, then Reggie Jackson could become viable at minimum salary. I would assume that he probably gets the start if they both wind up out. So this will be something to monitor. It sucks that this is like the last game on the slate, so we probably won't get this news before lock. But the Clippers could become an interesting team depending on what happens with Beverley and Lou Will. If they both wind up out, I do have a good amount of interest in Reggie Jackson. If they both play, the Clippers are probably not going to be a team I get much exposure to today at all. So this is kind of injury dependent. We'll have to see what happens with Beverley and Lou Will. I'll be able to touch on that more in the live stream in the afternoon. Hopefully we'll get an update and I can break everything down again in the live stream. But finishing off this video with the Kings, this is a team that I do have interest in even when they are fully healthy. It starts with De'Aaron Fox for me. He was a core play for me on the last slate. He was so affordable last slate. He was like $7,400. The price tag has come up today at $8,100, so he's not nearly as good of an option today as he was on the last slate. Plus, it's a tougher matchup as well. But still, Fox is a guy that has 45, 50-point upside basically every time he steps on the floor. On this slate specifically, he's not someone that I'm really going to be going out of my way to play. I do prefer SGA for, $400 less. Buddy Hield, I believe, is probable. He's expected to play, I think. Yeah, he's expected to play at $6,900. Really not much interest in him. Richaun Holmes, I think, is someone you could look to in tournaments. Like, he's starting to get consistent big minutes. When he's playing 34, 36 minutes a night, like, you're going to see big games from Richaun Holmes. At $6,800 with his price way up now, like, nobody's going to play him. So in tournaments, you could definitely get a 40-plus point game again from Richaun Holmes. He could be a guy you consider in tournaments. But really, like, there's not much I love from the Kings either. Normally they're a team I do like to target, but on this slate, with the pricing how it is, they're not a team I'm looking to kind of, run to play. Like, not much stands out in this Clippers game outside of maybe the guards on the Clippers side, depending on what happens there with Beverley and Lou Will. Maybe someone like Reggie Jackson could become viable. But, yeah, I think we covered that game, and I think we broke all 8 games down team by team. I hope you guys did enjoy this new format. I do enjoy making the videos this way. I think this is probably going to be the way I permanently make them moving forward, at least for this year with the COVID stuff, like with teams, missing so many players some days. It just makes it easier to break down when you go team by team. So hopefully enjoy the new format. Hopefully enjoy this video as well, guys. Hit that like button before you do get out of here. Hit the subscribe button as well. Be sure to click the notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do enjoy my videos, if you want to get more content from me, you enjoy the content that I put out on YouTube, I have more stuff available on Patreon. You can check that out, link down below in the description if that does interest you. If you do want to see more that I have to offer, you can check out the Patreon link down below. But best of luck tonight, guys. Hopefully I'll see you in the live stream later on Friday afternoon. Be sure to tune in if you are able to. But best of luck tonight, and we'll see you in the next one, guys. Good luck. Peace.